In Rookwood. We just finished listening to the most inspirational speech with Nigel. I want you guys for right now to be encouraged about what is happening around our country. Nigel has been on a 5-week tour. Going around the United States to bring hope. And he's joined with Freedom Works, who has a network that's amazing. And here in Ohio, they've joined with, is it called the Ohio Freedom Alliance?
I think so, yeah.
And they, as soon as we walked in the door, we were greeted by these amazing women ready to get us plugged in. We may become precinct council women, I don't know, but they can help us do it. So Leah, what did you think about Nigel's speech?
Oh, it was amazing. And like, you guys, so what happened?
At a British pub.
One of the bistros canceled on Nigel, and so they found this open air British pub. I'm not even kidding you, where it says like Scottish skirts in there. It was so perfect. So Nigel and Brandon from Adam Brandon from Freedom Works shows up. He has a show on Newsmax on Sunday mornings. So when they pull up and they see the pub, they get so excited. Nigel gave a lot of he took a lot of questions. He was very personable. We didn't have a lot of time to talk to him afterwards.
Why? Because he's headed
to Florida to another one. But I want you guys to be encouraged because things are changing. People are wanting hope and they're receiving hope. And we have so much to look forward to. Go ahead.
Yes. No, we have a ton to look forward to. So we want to show you guys some interviews that we took today. And then we'll come back with a little bit of Nigel and then we'll wrap it up.
The Brexit was done multiple times. It was failed multiple times. And he just kept going and going. And meetings like this, pint by pint, activist by activist. And he won. He was successful. And the lessons that you see, the parallels between Britain and the United States are just perfect parallels. And I'm sure at times he felt as down as we feel. But they won. They kept at it. They stayed in the fight. So we often focus on Brexit as the success. But the other parallel that I find fascinating, we have the Democratic Party, they have the Labour Party. The Labour Party in Britain is dead. This man, Nigel Farage, not only took Britain outside the European Union, he killed the Labour Party. If you could do that there, if we work on our grassroots here, we can do the exact same thing. So I am proud to raise a pint and cheers. And welcome Nigel Farage to Cincinnati. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. My first visit to Cincinnati. Union Jack, Red Telephone Boxes, Start there, and most important of all, lovely people. So it's a real pleasure to be here. Because of COVID, I haven't given a speech for a year. But the last speech I'd given was in the European Parliament on the 31st of January, when we waved the flag and said goodbye to them. I must say, you look much friendlier in the European Parliament than the extraordinary thing about our two countries is they are today, culturally, economically, and politically, closer than they have ever been. Just think about music, film, literature, art, theatre, all of those things. Our countries are incredibly close together. I mean, so much so that I had to laugh when I was here in the election run-up in November, and I followed Donald Trump around the rallies, and I even got to speak at one, because Trump never warns you. He goes, hey Nigel, come up here on the stage. There isn't much choice really, you just have to go. But it did make me laugh that Trump was, it's all about making America great, all about those three beautiful words, made in the USA, everything had to be American about the campaign. And as Air Force One appeared on the horizon, come in to all the airports where the rallies were taking place, the music would play. A big part of the Trump rallies was the music. And who was he playing? David Bowie. Elton John. More English music than he was playing American music. But you kind of almost wouldn't know these days, would you? But politically also, we do move very much in sync. You know, the older ones here can remember the period of Reagan and Thatcher. Two very similar political leaders, two, in my opinion, very great political leaders who did an awful lot for our countries. An awful lot for our countries. And then we had the period of Clinton and Blair. Oh, God. Well, but they don't stick to the... I'm trying to make the point that we act in a similar way. And then in 2016, against all odds, and despite everything that was said, and all the dire predictions of what would happen to house prices, to jobs, to Britain's role in the world, the British people voted Brexit. And with that, I came to Ohio. I came to Cleveland for the Republican convention. And I was stunned at the impact Brexit had had in America. You know, taxi drivers, bartenders would say, hey, aren't you that Brexit guy? You know, Brexit had resonated. And so I was thrilled in August 16 in Mississippi to take the stage with Donald Trump and to say to people, you know, Trump put this message out, which I did as effectively as I could, you know, whether it was on Fox or CNN or MSNBC, to put this message out that if we could overcome all the odds, if we could beat pollsters telling us we were 10 points behind and all the rest of it, I was certain that the Trump campaign could do it. So I like to think, normally, we copy everything you do. But in 2016, with Brexit and then the election of Donald Trump, you copied what we did. I think Brexit was a major contributor to President Trump getting elected, and I was very proud of the role that I could play. Really Thank you. Not all exports from the UK to America are as successful as that. Our current latest export to you is a young couple. I haven't said anything yet. Well, yes, it's Harry and Meghan. It's Harry and Meghan. They're living in La La Land. And he's managed now, not just to insult the Queen, not just to insult his father in public, but he's also decided to go into battle against your First Amendment rights. I mean, the whole thing is quite extraordinary. But here's the bad news.
They won't go back.
Here's the bad news. They're yours for keeps. Well, I'm going to say, as they're in La La Land, they're probably very happy out there. But this trip is in many ways very similar to my 2016 trip, because it is, as Adam has said, you know, we thought we'd won in June 16. We really thought we'd won, and everybody promised us they would honour the result of the referendum. They did the opposite. They tried from day one to delegitimise everything we voted for. You know, they told us we were stupid, knuckle draggers, ignorant. Racist. Oh, obviously racist. I mean, everything's racist these days. In fact, that word, I do think actually, that word is now being so overused that it almost begins to mean nothing. I do genuinely think that. How is it racist? How is it racist to show photo ID when you go to vote?
Right.
I mean, how is that racist? And I was really thrilled to see in our Queen's speech last week, we are going to bring in photo ID for all elections in the UK, and you must make sure you can say I only raised that one because I wanted to boast. And it's this. This is a British passport, right? And the first two words on it for the last 30 years have been European Union. First two words on our passport, which sums up really the extent to which our country has been given away. This is my new passport. The words European Union have been expunged. Anyway, we finished up with a piece of British law, signed into law, and a very firm promise that we would leave the European Union on March the 29th, 2019. And we woke up on the 30th of March, 2019, and guess what? We had not left. And far from wanting us to vote again in a second referendum, the establishment had decided that wasn't necessary. We just weren't going to leave, and the greatest democratic exercise in the history of the nation was simply going to be ignored. And there was real boasting about this. CNN, New York Times, BBC, Brexit's finished, it's not going to happen. And so if you think you're feeling down, after all the things that happened last November, questions about election integrity, division being encouraged and forced by Marxist groups in your cities, indeed in our cities, as well as we speak, and the prospect of much of what the Biden administration may want to do. Just think how we felt. We really thought we were liberated, and then it felt as if we lost it all. And a lot of people were very down, very disheartened. I was not one of them. I was not one of them. I saw this betrayal coming a long time before. I knew that in their hearts the British people would not have changed their minds, and I spent months planning the fight back, the counter-attack, and we did it in the summer, late spring summer of 2019. We had to have a European election because we hadn't left, and I formed a new coalition, and within 6 weeks of forming it, we didn't just win the election, we got 50% more votes than any other party, and before they even counted the votes, the disgraceful, treacherous Prime Minister Theresa May had resigned in disgrace. So we did it. We did it because I built something that was called the People's Army, with 400 chapters across the United Kingdom. And grassroots politics is often the most unfashionable bit of politics, but it actually matters more than anything else. All of you, effectively, can be messengers for this, and to convert many other people and make them see the light. And that's why Freedom Works, for me, is a perfect fit here in this country. We've been out doing these events now. I think I'm in week 5 of doing this, although frankly, it feels like it's been years. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I'm thoroughly enjoying it. And yes, our Labour Party, which had been the traditional home for working class people to vote, had always been, throughout our history, an intensely patriotic political party. Maybe different views on tax and spend to what more conservative figures would want, but an intensely patriotic party. And what happened to the British Labour Party is exactly the same phenomenon that is happening to the Democrats in this country. There is this new fanatical hardline left. They don't believe in nation states. They don't believe in national symbols. They're actually, through cancel culture, keen to deride all of our histories, all of our symbols, and you see this with statues being removed, and even your founding fathers now coming under the most extraordinary criticism. It is Marxism, pure and simple. But here's the point. As the British Labour Party went down that route, what they did increasingly was to alienate working class and blue collar voters. And they started voting for me in their millions because they thought I believed in the country. They are not ashamed of the history of our nation. In fact, they're rather proud that their grandparents and great-grandparents went out and fought in 2 world wars so that the whole of Europe could be free and democratic. And I see the same phenomenon here. I see a Democrat Party being dragged leftwards. And frankly, some of those members of Congress, the Democrats, appear to actually hate America and virtually everything it stands for. And that is your opportunity. Your opportunity is they're making the same mistakes as the Socialist Party in Britain made. And I know there are problems. I know there are difficulties with social media. I know there are questions about election integrity. I'm not pretending any of this is easy, but the point I'm making is the political circumstances are very familiar to me. They're very similar in so many ways. And if we can get out and get Brexit back, when we had the entire global establishment against us, and with our relatively limited resources, and just me up at the head of it, I'm damn certain you can get America back, you can storm the midterms, and you can put your president back in the White House in 2020. I'm very happy to take 1 or 2 quick questions before I hand back to the organisers.
Nigel.
My namesake.
Yes. These are all great people here. But as we know, there are some people that they're afraid to come out. They get called the names you're talking about, racist, misogynistic, blah, blah, blah. What would be your advice to tell people like Mike Farage and these great people here when we're talking to someone who just, they're scared? And obviously we saw the riots.
Yeah, look, I mean, as I say, I think if you overuse a term of abuse, it starts to have less impact. It starts to become a little bit like the Cry Wolf children's story. I've been called every name under the sun, repeatedly and endlessly, I think probably Trump and I were the two most abused people in the Western world in the last 40 or 50 years, which is why I get on very well with him. And by the way, I was down at Mar-a-Lago last weekend. It was their last weekend of the season as the weather gets sort of intolerably hot. And it was good to see Trump. He's lost weight, he's playing loads of golf, looking fit, in good humour, and you know, he's obviously got a big decision to make as to what he does in 2024. So I had a private chat with him, and you'd probably like to know what he said to me in that conversation. But I'm afraid I can't disclose it. Yeah, look, I mean, here's the point. You know, just this endless, frankly, moronic cry that everything is racist. I think the impact of it is becoming less and less and less. And you know, I was brought up to believe that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words can never hurt me. And I genuinely believe in that. And I think if in our hearts, you know, we feel this cause matters so much, then we may have to endure a little bit of unpleasantness. Hey, the generations that went before us had to make much bigger sacrifices than just enduring a few difficult words. So just keep going and know that actually, outside of the big cities, and outside of some of the products that our universities and colleges are producing these days, and I think, by the way, the Freedom Works initiative on this with school boards, I think is an absolutely fantastic idea. Parents are going to get involved. But actually, once you leave the big cities and go and speak to ordinary people, you won't get any abuse at all, because they'll say, yes, we agree with you. And a lot of them will be families that have voted Democrat for a very, very long time. That's the opportunity. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Michael, and I'm from Florence, Kentucky. And my question is simple on the surface, but I believe it's complex. We're actually being besieged in the Republic by a multifaceted or multi-front sort of attack. We have the hardcore left Democrats, we have Antifa, we have Black Lives Matter, and we have the college campuses with professors that are creating an atmosphere to spew whatever it is doctrine that they want. And so how do we go about, without going fisticuffs against them and all this, but to somehow get a stronghold, a foothold against a multi-pronged attack on the Republic and what we would consider good, decent, moral, respectful sort of conversation.
Be in no doubt that the other side are heavily funded, heavily organised, and work together in a most remarkable and actually rather disciplined way. The weakness on the Conservative side, if I, as an outsider, well, I'm half an outsider, but if I can say this, the weakness on the Conservative side is there are too many different groups operating in their own silos and not cooperating together, which is absolutely mad. I would say that to you. But I would also say this. Look, you've got the opportunity in many parts of this country, through the primaries, to make sure the Republican Party starts to be represented rather more by people who are actually conservative. Yeah. Too many of them are simply just career politicians. They're dull, boring individuals. They don't reach out. You're quite right to put together that analysis of all those different groups and how they operate. But you know something? Try as though they will, they're not affecting the centre ground of public opinion. Overwhelmingly, just for example, overwhelmingly in America, people think photo ID is correct for elections. 75% of Americans think it's right for elections. So they can scream all the abuse they want, but it's not actually working. Our difficulty on this side, and when I say our difficulty, I say it because of this. I've achieved my life's dream. My life's dream was to get Britain out of the European Union. And there aren't many people that achieve their life's ambition. I've done that, and I'm happy with that. Very happy with that. But if America falls, we'll just be left isolated on our own. You guys are the leaders of the free world. We want America not to fall, America to come back and start doing the value. So, and again, that is why I'm happy to work with Freedom Works, which is the biggest conservative grassroots organisation in this country, because we've got a job to do with millions of people out there who feel as we do in their hearts, but maybe we feel disengaged, disenchanted from the whole electoral process. We got Brexit done, we had to win it more than once, but we got Brexit done because we engaged millions of people who had never voted in elections in their lives, but they thought the states were so important that they went out and did their stuff. And that is exactly what you've got to do if you're going to save this country and put it back on the right course. You've got to persuade people out there who agree with us but don't normally engage with the electoral process to get out there on polling day and cast their vote. And that's why grassroots matters so much. It's those conversations that happen at the family breakfast table, that happen at the golf club, that happen in a pub with the Union Jack outside. But that's the point about grassroots. Momentum in politics doesn't come from the top. Momentum are hundreds of thousands of simultaneous conversations going on around the country as people make their minds up. So look, I know it looks tough. We faced all the same problems, exactly the same problems, and yet we were able to overcome it. And I repeat the point, if us, with very few resources, could overcome the entirety of the global establishment, I'm damn certain you can do it.
Can we speak up? Okay, fine. Well, I was pressing. I felt like how many hours? Now we don't. We still have to face down the machine with many votes. How are we ever going to beat that? Election integrity.
Yeah, look, that was a question about election integrity. Look, Blair introduced this mail-out ballot voting in Britain 20 years ago, and it's been abused in the most incredible way. And of course, the beneficiary has always been the Labour Party. Yet, despite that apparatus, because support for the Labour Party has completely collapsed, then they have been overwhelmed. I agree with you. There are concerns, real concerns, and what you've got to do is put as much pressure on all of your legislators as you possibly can at every single level, and make sure this becomes a major electoral issue for the midterms. You don't need voting machines. You don't need any of it. The French who rarely get much right at all, it seems to me. Well, there's only 21 miles divides us, so it's a friendly rivalry. But the French have looked at all of this. The French have outlawed early mail-out ballots. You can get an absentee ballot if you're 97 or working overseas, which never accounts for more than 3% of the vote. The French have abolished this. The French count everything manually. They're put visibly on piles in tables in town halls around France, and it works. So look, you've got to put as much pressure on legislators to make sure that you do not allow the absolute charade that took place last November. And given what I said to the previous question, that 75% of Americans think that just for example, photo ID makes sense, I think get these campaigns right, you're pushing it an open door.
Yes, you've always been great at using humor. You explain how we can use humor in spreading this message we've been talking about.
Well, practically, just be yourselves. I mean, one of the problems with politics, it seems to me, everybody's over-scripted. They're all over-scripted. They all read. They don't give speeches, they read. Now the answer is, go for a good lunch, turn up in the European Parliament, just tell them what you think. You're right. Humanity, you catch more flies with sugar than you do with vinegar. So yes, we've got to be human, we've got to be real, unafraid to have a laugh at the joke, to be happy warriors, but also, and linking back to the comment earlier on from the gentleman from Kentucky, we cannot allow at any time our behaviour to descend to that we've seen from Antifa or Black Lives Matter. We must have the moral high ground with them. And in the wake of January the 6th, that becomes even more important. We must do things through persuasion. We must do things by being proper human beings. Do things by engaging. We must not allow any extremes to come in and dominate or be seen to dominate the conservative movement. That way lies disaster. There you go.
You mentioned when you were fighting back that you had a group of 400 grassroots organizations, chapters,
yeah.
And I'm assuming they were networked. with each other. I mean, they all knew what each other was doing.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you would consider some sort of training program or seminar to have us reapply your tips from grassroots.
Well, look, I think the truth of that is the Freedom Works are well organised, and they've shown themselves capable of working with all sorts of different campaign groups, which is the right way forward, because we need cooperation with these different groups. So all I can say to you is this: that I've been here on the road 4 or 5 weeks now with this organisation. I'm impressed with what they do. If there's any skill sets that I can bring them to the UK, then I'm happy to give it. But as it is, I think they're heading in the right direction, and I think get this grassroots, get this army out there in the field persuading ordinary decent folk who don't spend their time watching the news, who aren't really engaged in politics in the way that we are, but are worried about the world their kids are growing up in. They care about stuff. They're not political addicts like we are, but they care about stuff, and we've got to get out there and persuade those people. And that is the key. Yeah, we've got huge problems to overcome, but that is the key to making this work. It really is. Right, I'll do a couple more, and then I better shut up.
So yesterday I heard you speaking about the situation in Israel and then what happened in Great Britain the other day and the whole world stage. And then our extremist Democrat legislators here and their positions on things. So could you talk to us about that, please?
Well, look, one of the key issues that destroyed the Labour Party, partly it was cancel culture, but it was also irresponsible, open-door, legal and illegal immigration. All right? And Mrs. Merkel did the same thing, if you remember. Mrs. Merkel just said, anyone that wants to come, come. And millions of people came in. If you allow a very large number of young males within the ages of 18 and 26 who speak a foreign language, who come from countries in which women aren't even regarded today as second-class citizens, and you bring those people in very large numbers, and they congregate together, and there is no assimilation with the native population, you are headed for a disaster. And I think what we saw on the streets of London on Sunday morning was some of the most shocking scenes I've ever... For those that don't know, there were convoys of cars driving through the Jewish districts of North London, flying Palestinian flags from the windows and sunroofs and through loud hailers, shouting, I'm not even going to go anywhere near what was being said, but shouting anti-Semitic, horrendous stuff. And I'm waiting to see.
Threatening rape.
Yeah, all of that stuff. All of that. It was horrendous. Utterly horrendous. And that's what happens if you get your immigration policy wrong. And that is why the real Achilles heel that the Democrats have is what is going on your southern border. When people come legally to a country, you know their name, you know their background, you know their financial position, you're able to find out whether they've got bad criminal records from where they come from, and they go through a process, and it costs them money to do it, and they then can legally live in America and ultimately become American citizens. And it's a massive insult to all the people that have come to the States legally for Biden to be allowing 1,000 people a day about which you've no idea who these people are. You've no idea whether they pose a national security threat. And I think electorally, that's going to be the Democrats' biggest Achilles heel next year. So what happened in London was utterly shameful. I hope the police do their job and apply the law evenly. But in Paris, in Brussels, and it's not even 80 years ago that the war ended. It's not even 80 years ago that the Russians went into Auschwitz and found what they found. And you've got the Jewish population, unless they're rich and living in gated communities, the Jewish population now fleeing European cities. It's almost difficult to comprehend and believe, but the New Left have this obsession with Palestine. The New Left, frankly, they've almost made anti-Semitism mainstream. And I think for all of us on the conservative side of politics, we know and understand that everything about our civilization is underpinned by the Judeo-Christian culture. They are the roots upon which everything in your country, my country, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they're the roots of everything that we built up in what Winston Churchill called the English-speaking peoples of the world. And if you think about it, earlier on, Adam talked about the Republic and the threat to that. But actually, if you think about it, what these people are posing is a threat, in many ways, to our entire civilization and everything that we know and understand. And that is how high the stakes are. But the reason that I'm optimistic about this and not pessimistic about this is ordinary folk feel this. Ordinary folk understand this. Ordinary folk want to live their lives, do their jobs, have their retirements, and see their children and grandchildren prosper and do well and live in peace. And that's what we've got going for us, all right? Now, if that's not a big enough motivation for all of you to get out there and work damn hard over the course of the next year and more, I don't know what is, all right? Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things that concern me is the debasing of the currency in the United States. And I don't know if Britain ran into that same issue, but we've got a government that just prints money left and right. It'll debase the currency even more, become worthless. I'm afraid that the left will gain political power over these people by being willing to give them whatever they want financially to keep themselves going. Is there a parallel there?
Well, yeah. Look, the whole Western world's doing it. I mean, America's doing it on an even bigger scale than we're doing it. And debasement of currency, hey, we're back to Nixon and breaking the link with gold and fiat currency and governments able to play all sorts of crazy games. Look, a lot of us have wondered at what point does government policy lead to inflation coming into the system? And I think now it is happening. It is happening. Milton Friedman said that inflation was a disease of money caused by government. And in the 1980s we proved that we could deal with it. Thatcher and Reagan dealt with that inflation problem. This lot in the administration now haven't got a clue how to deal with any of this. And I think, and it could be before, it could be after the midterms, but I think that once inflation comes back into an economy, then what you find are the middle classes see their savings and their assets being destroyed. I mean, you've had a pretty good 4 years with your 401ks under President Trump, and I think all of that is about to turn. I think there are elements of the stock market that now, not the big companies, but elements of the stock market now that look way overpriced to me, particularly some of those NASDAQ stocks. So economics is going to have a much bigger impact, I think, as 2024 approaches than it does now. But I guess for some people, they're probably feeling quite nostalgic. I mean, after all, we've got trouble in the Middle East, queues at gas stations, and inflation. It feels like Jimmy Carter's time, doesn't it? Right, organisers, how am I on time? Fine. Okay, well, listen, I'll end it there. Thanks very much. I've done my best with the questions. Please have a great day.
So, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this as much as we have.
Yes.
A little taste of the UK
Here
right
in the
here
USA.
in the USA, in Ohio, in one of our little towns. I'm thrilled. This man has been a champion for freedom for the past 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
Not only in the UK, but now he's taking what the model that he did over there and brought it here to the United States, and he is bringing hope.
Nigel Farage, for those of you who don't know, he single-handedly took on the European Union with humor and wit and charm. And every time Brexit was put on the blocks or it looked like it didn't happen, he kept going. He kept pressing. He created two political parties in a country. Two.
Yes.
UKIP and the Brexit Party. He flooded the European Union seats, the MEP seats in the European Union. He flooded them with conservatives.
Right.
So much so that Theresa May knew that she had to get Brexit done. He forced the resignation of Theresa May.
It's amazing.
He helped lead and he put the feet
held
to the fire.
Thank you.
He
Boris Johnson's
held
feet to the
Boris
fire.
Johnson, the Conservatives' feet to the fire, making an 80-plus seat majority for the Tories. He single-handedly destroyed the Labour Party, and now he's going around America saying,
You can
chin
do
up.
it too. Chin up.
Chin up. Don't give up. It's not over.
Keep fighting.
The fat lady hasn't sung.
All right, so we love you guys. God loves you. God bless. Remember, it's not just a conspiracy theory.
If we're in our country back, America's comeback tour.
I love it. America's comeback tour.
was cold, all alone. No place for home every day, so afraid. But you called my name.